Welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales, proudly presented by Membrane. This podcast is your gateway to mastering the craft of modern selling. If you're passionate about growth, impact, and unlocking full potential in sales and revenue, you're in the right place. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And now let's get started with today's guest. What's up, everybody? Today, we're diving into a topic that's very specific, manufacturing sales. And most manufacturers would never tolerate a 1% defect rate on the shop floor. They live and breathe this stuff. Quality control, Six Sigma, process, discipline, continuous improvement. But then they get to sales and they accept forecast rates with accuracy levels that are 25% off or much worse. And they accept it like it's something they have to deal with. It's not. Sales isn't a game of chance. It's a game of probability. We work to improve that probability, that predictability of customer acquisition. And today I'm excited to bring on a master of that concept, Liz Heiman. Liz is a CEO and founder of Regarding Sales. She got her start at Miller Heiman, where she built the company's first SDR team, led marketing, managed account executives, and even turned around the Asia Pacific division. Combining that experience with her background in economics and systems thinking, she is helping mid-sized manufacturing and technical B2B companies build repeatable sales processes that drive 10 to 30% annual growth, or even up to 10x scale. So today, we're talking about how to bring true strategy and quality control into manufacturing sales organizations and build scalable teams. So let's jump in with Liz. Hey, Liz, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we had to discuss this because you came up with a point the other day that I loved, and we were just talking in conversation about it. I was like, we got to dive into that. So we're not going to waste any time. The point you made when in our conversation was that manufacturing companies out there, they tune their operations, they accept less than a 1% defect rate. And that's even high. They're looking at the high side of that. But then they look at their forecasts and they're accepting, 25% failure rate in terms of their forecast. So there's a big gap there. And we got to talk about it because you have some really cool ideas on fixing it.
Yeah. Well, let me just dive into this less than 1% defect rate. Right. So companies are employing Six Sigma. It's a big deal. Manufacturing companies are trying to implement the Six Sigma program, which gets them down to, if they can get it right, the goal is 3.4 defects per million. Right, which is like 99 point something, 99, I don't know. It's right. Most companies aren't going to reach that, but they're really striving for less than 1%, like you said. And they go through an entire process in Six Sigma to look at every single process on their manufacturing floor and clean it up and find the places where mistakes happen, fix the places where mistakes happen. We don't do that in sales. Most manufacturing companies aren't even thinking about how you would do that in sales because many CEOs don't believe you can. So they function in this place where, while sales is sort of this black box, stuff goes in the top, we wait around and hope that something comes out the bottom, and we throw out a goal at the beginning of the year and keep our fingers crossed and hope we hit it. And there really isn't, for many companies, any sort of process, assessment, correction, that happens along the way. And again, because I think they don't know enough about it to realize, all right, I may not be able to get it perfect. I'm not going to get down to 3.4 per million, but can I get it closer than 25%?
Well, there's a whole lot of even technology that has sprung up around that issue, specifically in manufacturing. Like you have people doing data mining of all their CRM notes and a bunch of stuff to say, well, what on earth? My reps are saying I'm going to be, I'm doing 100 million, but I know I'm going to get it closer to like 440, right? But that's not the answer. The answer is not that data mining and that type of stuff. But you have a very specific opinion on the answer, and you've done it in a number of companies. So let's start to dive on that. Like, how do we start to help manufacturing companies deconstruct their sales processes and people to really start to increase their forecast predictability?
Okay, I want to throw out a statistic before we do this.
Yes.
That really highlights how important it is that we think about this process. In an average company, I'm going to throw out a couple of statistics. And 80% of American companies cannot forecast within 25% accuracy, which means if anybody thinks I've got this wrong, you let me know. But my interpretation of that is if you are a $40 million company and you can't forecast within 25% accuracy, that actually means you don't know whether you're going to hit 5 million or 3 million. How do you run a company like that? Literally, how do you know how many people to hire? How do you know what products to buy? Or how much of the materials you need for production or packaging? How do you do any of that stuff when you don't know? And everybody's like, well, an extra $1 million, I'm not going to complain about. Well, if it's 25%, you may not be able to fulfill it. Right? These are huge fluctuations. This is massive when you're talking about running a company. So then let's talk a little bit more about that before we go into a solution. If you look at American sales reps today, and these numbers vary depending upon whose data you read, but they're saying that that across American companies, somewhere between 60% and 75% of sales reps don't hit their quota. Don't. That means less than 30% or less than 40% of your team is going to hit quota. So if you've got 4 people, which a lot of mid-sized manufacturing companies have, 1 is going to hit their quota. And we typically count on that 1 person to carry the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that 1 person generally becomes responsible for 50% of revenue if you start to look at teams of that size.
And then it only takes 1 deal, right, not to close, that puts the company in jeopardy. So why is it so vastly unpredictable, so incredibly variable? Well, there's a bunch of reasons. One is that we can't predict the economy. We can try. Mm-hmm. We can't predict COVID. We can't predict. There's a lot of things that we're running a company. Maybe there's somebody out there, the president's economists, whoever, who the professors that know what's going on. But for most of us in our everyday life, as leaders of companies, we don't fully grasp all of the nuances of what the economy is going to do. And then we have to deal with policies, tariffs, or exchange rates, or interest rates, or any of those things, right? So all of those things are happening. So can we ever expect to be 100% accurate about sales consistently? No, we're never going to be. We're just not.
Yep.
But we're missing steps to take us closer, which is what you said. Like, Liz, what are the things that we need to do? And here's what it is just like you have a process on your manufacturing floor that is quality checked and pressure tested, and there are people watching to make sure that it's happening the way it's supposed to, right? We have buffers and barriers and things to ensure that things go right, and they still go wrong sometimes. So we don't have things like, you don't walk into most manufacturing floors and find stacks of product half finished that nobody knows what is the status. You don't get ready to start producing. We're going to do this production. This is where we're going to start now. And then somebody goes, oh, oops, by the way, we never ordered the materials. Right? You don't finish up and go, oh, we have no packaging. Or, we finished the stuff and somebody's supposed to get it, but we don't know who or where to send it. Like those things, that's not how you run an effective manufacturing company. But it's what we do in sales. It's exactly what we do.
Yeah, I have a friend, I don't know if he coined this term or something, but we were talking about it the other day in discussion. It was the term, a lot of sales organizations treat sales like a game of chance.
Yes.
They treat it like that black box you're talking about, but they don't understand. What they really don't understand is it is a game of probability, not a game of chance. And so they do all the work on like Six Sigma and all that. That is really to decrease the probability of error, right? And so we skip so many steps in that decreasing the probability of error in our sales team that in a lot of organizations, and I have seen it rampant in manufacturing with the companies that I've worked with across over the years. What is that fundamental disconnect? There is something there, right? There's something there that we, on one side of the business, we're so attuned to it, but on the other side, we almost over-index to the art side of it in a lot of companies.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that happen. So one is that we don't know our math. And I'm going to just back up and say there are sales consultants out there who will say, and they say all the time, don't worry about the math. Just have better calls. All you have to do is have better calls. You know, this myth that it's how many dials or how many calls or how many this or how many that doesn't matter. Just have better calls when you have them. But I can guarantee you this, if you don't call anybody, you will have no business. So there is a number. And there's kind of a standard number that we use, and it's kind of built into Salesforce and a lot of the other CRMs. And it's this idea that if you have your stages and I'm going to use the philosophy that we used in Miller Heiman funnel. Mm-hmm. So in strategic selling, I'm going to use that just so you guys all know what the context is. But we basically have a handful of stages. The first one is prospecting. We used to call it universe, but it's prospecting. And the next stage is qualifying. And the next stage is solving or nurturing or whatever you want to call that. That part where you're solving the problem and getting to know everybody and handling objections. Yep. And then the last stage is closing. So if you just take your funnel and make it that simple, we're not going to include marketing, but we're going to include sales activity that counts as prospecting. We believe there is, on average, a 10-to-1 ratio. 10 conversations with true prospects, my ideal customer at the right time, and one of them will close. That's a big number. That means if I need 100 to close, I need 1,000 conversations. So we may learn over time those aren't our numbers. Like we may go, oh, actually it takes 25, or oh, you know what? Because of the way we get our leads, it only takes 6. Mm-hmm. But you can't adjust it if you don't track it. And a lot of companies don't track until you create a proposal, which means you have no idea what the top of the funnel looks like.
Yeah, and I love that you use that word conversation. And here's why, because I did a lot of research and study on this back in the day. The listeners of the podcast know I spent the early part of my career building a sales as a service organization, but we looked at the key metric, and we tracked everything. We tracked all the vanity metrics that you could ever track. Phone calls, voicemails, emails, social media, like everything. The core metric that could get us to a predictable funnel was the conversation. And it was the conversation, rather you could rate it as it was a positive or a negative. But that's so critical. Like all the other metrics, to me, you need to know what type of effort you're putting out to get those conversations. But everything has to be structured to get you to that moment in time when you're engaging with a prospect meaningfully and able to have a dialogue, right? And I think that's so important. And so when you're talking that 10-to-1, I think you're dead on into that conversation if you have a defined ICP and you know the problems you're trying to solve. But a lot of people don't get that as the metric. They're like, oh, well, my rep did 400 dials. Okay, great. And I'm of the mind that, okay, that's fine. They did activity. But what I really want to see is that in that quality control and increasing our probability, I want to see evidence of that good back and forth, that engagement, that conversation. It's so critical.
Which takes us to the next step, right? So it's the conversation, it's the engagement, it's the momentum that you create. And this is a word that I adopted really about a year ago, because I love what it means. If you're, pushing a lawnmower uphill or snowblower, like I was trying to do yesterday, you lose your momentum and you're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
You need momentum. In sales, we need momentum. And when the momentum stops, that's when we talk about being ghosted, right? Oh, I got ghosted. Well, the momentum stopped. What happened? So we need to be able to measure and track momentum. And we need our CRM to help us keep that momentum. So we tend to, rather than measuring and monitoring and talking about momentum, we talk about what did you do last? Instead of what did you do? What are you doing next? What did they commit to as the next action? How are you keeping this going? How are you keeping the momentum? And so momentum is really important. And there's a couple of things that are momentum. One is those conversions from stage to stage, right? Okay, so they agreed to have a conversation about this specific thing and bring certain people, whatever that is, so that we get it from prospecting to qualifying. And qualifying is that time where we're understanding enough about what they're doing to figure out whether they have the budget to work with us, whether we can solve their problem, these kinds of things, right? We often talk about BANT, or what I call BANFT, because you got to have fit also. But, and then you have the next conversion is solving. We've gotten to the point where it is worth us putting our resources toward creating a proposal for this company, right? There's something happening. But you've got to be able to measure those transitions, but there's things in between those transitions that you also need to be able to measure. Are they willing to introduce us to other people in the company? Have we got the information that we need in order to make a proposal? Like, what are the things that have to happen? What do they have to agree to keep the momentum? If I'm sending them a proposal, I shouldn't be sending it unless we've agreed for a time to review it. Right? These are the things, the measures of momentum. So we have to know our math, what I call the sales math, which is the ratios and the conversion rates. And we also have to know what the momentum measures are. And we have to be focused on what's happening next. So it means that we then have to have a common language. Right? We can't have a language that is not specific and clear and agreed upon. We can't talk about deals and opportunities and not be clear whether they mean the same thing or something different. We can't have a sales rep say, oh yeah, it's a done deal. Is it closed? Because closed means I have a contract and a check or whatever it is that we have to have in order for. So is that a verbal? Did that mean you put it into the close stage? Like, we have to have that language so precise that when I look at the CRM, I can believe what it says because we have a common language and we keep it up to date. And actually what I'm talking about is step 2 of having the, having some knowledge about what our forecast is, whether we're going to hit our forecast or not, or hit our goals, right? So the first thing that really happens is up at the top, which is the strategy. You have to not just pull numbers out of thin air. You have to know, how much time does it take? How many weeks does it take? How much work? How many people? Can the market support it? Can this industry support it? Whatever it is. Right? You have to know that and have a strategy and be really clear about what we're trying to accomplish. Now I can put the sales process in place and I can set the systems in place to support that. And then the next step is where it falls apart.
It is very uncommon that you have in the sales world, that you have that coherent, a lot of times you have a top level strategy that's pretty nice and it's got an ICP and we know who we're talking. We understand what our basic sale times are. We know who our top targets are. We understand our market fit. Like, a lot of times you have that translation level down into the math and the actual process and definitions by which we are going to get there is a key part that doesn't get skipped anywhere else in a manufacturing organization, like nowhere else. But I guarantee you, if I talk to 50 manufacturers, 25 of them will have skipped this process into the depth that it needs to happen on the sales side? Like, I mean, there is no, and this is a part of what we do as we help them define, like at Membrane, like we have a great CRM to help them define steps, stages, definitions, processes.
Right.
Like, but I go back to like, is that a gap in the understanding of like the CEO? Like, is it just because they're not aware that this needs to happen, or is it because sales leaders are still relying on old technology and or no technology and just winging it with personality? Or are there any reasons you found?
I think there's a whole bunch of reasons.
Yeah.
So one is that many CEOs of mid-sized manufacturing companies, so let's say a $40 to $200 million company with somewhere between 4 and 10 people in sales roles, whatever they are, they may be managing that team themselves still. And my guess is that that person has had very little sales experience except for founder-led sales, or perhaps in a lot of manufacturing companies, it's the next generation, and they maybe did some sales while they were coming up, but the CEO ran sales, and they also only ever did founder-led sales. So this focus on the process and the systems in manufacturing is what the CEO knows and what the COO knows. And they don't really know how it works in sales. And even just to say, look, I had somebody recently say to me, well, we're just, we had our Six Sigma guy do our sales process. I'm like, well, that's great, except that do you have a resource that knows enough about sales for the Six Sigma guy to do it right? Mm-hmm. Because they can only assess, someone has to be the expert, an expert to know. So it just because it's a process doesn't mean it's the right process, measuring the right things and finding the right pain points, right?
Yeah. I've also noticed that with in manufacturing and then in EOS. I don't know if you've seen this, but in EOS companies where they can define everything really, really well. And I love EOS. I think it's a wonderful system. But that gap between that process and the thought process behind it, and then the ability to lead and execute a sales team, there's a gap, right? Same thing in the manufacturing. Like, it's just, there's a gap that doesn't know how to deal with the uncertainty of dealing with conversations and people in the market effectively. I mean, that's really what we're building in. We're building in probability. We're not building it. We're going towards probability. We're not going towards reducing errors to 0%. We're doing the probability of winning. And so we talked about strategy. We talked about process. We talked about common and core definitions. We talked about knowing your numbers. I mean, how do you take an organization that has, and let's go to that 40 to 100 million, wherever we want, that founder-led sales guy that so many have out there, they've just sold because they've sold. I mean, I've sold the systems to some manufacturing companies that they've never had a CRM before. All they've done is they've had a tight, close-knit team, and they have an Excel sheet, and that's what they do.
And post-it notes.
And post-it notes. Yeah. So how is really the first step towards helping them drive from this idea of, we've grown and we've made it, pieced it together to actual scale, right? Like, that's the question that I hear all the time. Do you generally do it you're focusing on net new business? Do you focus on account growth? Where is the core focus around that?
So that goes back to the strategy. Before we can give our salespeople a goal, we need to stop and say, what did we do last year? What do we want to do this year? Where do we want to do it? Which industries? Which products do we want to sell? Who do we want to sell it to? Do we want to sell to our existing clients? Do we need to generate new revenue? And there isn't an answer, because depending upon your company, if, for instance, you have 80% of your revenue coming from 20% of your clients, you need to start working on diversifying. But you also need to make sure that you are getting the most of the clients that you already have. And you and I are going to talk more about this in future discussions, but companies leave millions and millions and millions of dollars on the table with their top 4 or 5 clients. And so we need to look at that. So when I'm making my strategy, I need to figure out how much more can I get from those clients and how am I going to figure out? Then I need to figure out how many new clients do we need to have? And is this a progressive, like if they buy this much this year, they'll probably buy this much next year and then that much more and then that much more? Or is it I sell it to them once or twice, or it's the same amount every year, or whatever it is? I need to know, what does my recurring revenue look like? How do I sell more to that customer? And I need to know which customers are the best fit. Am I spending a lot of time and energy selling to who is not my ideal customer profile? Maybe my ideal customer profile has changed. So who's my target might be different this year than it was last year. I mean, in the middle of COVID was the biggest lesson about that. Who was buying changed dramatically, and everybody had to rethink about it. But we should be rethinking about that every year, all the time. So I can't tell my salespeople what to do if I don't know what we're doing at a high level. And
go ahead.
And I can't create that sales process to support a strategy that I don't know what it is. And I can't say, oh, here's your sales goal, without saying, I want you to grow these clients and go after these targets. And this is the market we're going after, right?
See, what's interesting about this, it's what you're saying there is, a lot of times companies in manufacturing they will go back to their Six Sigma process, which is continual improvement. It's like, so we have to review things, and that process is you just have to review things every year, continually for improvements and changes and all those things. So it's a continual thing. But many times you don't see that on the sales team. They'll be operating on 1976, strategy about who they are and where they want to go and that type of stuff. So building in that continual strategy review, but also building in those continual process reviews at each part of the cycle. So, in our prospecting, our funnel, how are we operating in the funnel, by which products on the front end, but also, and then in account growth, like that being a static way of, we've always managed these accounts one way, so we're just going to manage them this way. This year, they leave so much money on the table. So I know we're going to have a whole session dedicated to this, but let's dive into this a little bit, because a lot of companies, you can just change that small portion of the business with, even if you're not focused on the whole strategy, just focus on how do we grow accounts and how do we dive in? Like, how do you start to unpack that with companies?
So I just want to say something. We need to go back to the idea of quality control when we finish this.
Okay.
But let's talk about how do you grow your largest account? The first thing is you have to recognize that if you are not growing those accounts, if you are not solving new problems with them, somebody else will. So one, you are doing them a disservice by not helping them with the things you can help them with. And two, you're leaving yourself vulnerable. So there's a certain amount of gravity that happens in relationships between customers and vendors, or however you want to use whatever word, partners. And it moves down to an operational level. You stop being strategic in your discussions and you just start filling orders. The same thing is happening with, by the way, our manufacturers reps or our channel partners, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same exact thing. So what do we need to do? One, we need to every year, every quarter, all the time, look at two critical things. One, what problems are they trying to solve? So I can look at their initiatives if they're a big enough company. If not, I can look at the industry. What are companies in those industries doing? So first I need to figure out, what are they trying to solve for in their company? What are they trying to fix or grow or change? And then overall, and then how do I fit into that? How can I help them with that? Because I may not have a direct solution, but I may have a way to help. And the second thing is to look at the people. If I have an account that I'm selling millions of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to, and I'm only talking to one or two people, a purchasing agent and maybe someone else, you are not well positioned. And then when you start to try to change it, you start to hear things like, stay in your own lane. Stay in your own lane is you are my operational partner. I will give you orders when I need something, otherwise go away. That is not a strategic partner, and that is not a relationship you can count on. So who do you need to be building relationships with? Who do you need to be refreshing relationships with? What do you need to be doing to partner with that company in a way that makes them think about you as a strategic partner instead of a vendor that they buy from? And let me say first and foremost, it is not easy.
I missed that. It's not easy. That's what you said there.
It's not easy.
Okay. No.
It's a lot of work.
No. And that's one of the reasons I think we have that gravity is because it's so hard, right? So it's so hard. So we go to the familiar and we're not willing to accept the fact that we're not reinventing ourselves, but trying to be that person that brings value. We have to grow personally as ourselves, but also we need to have a good mechanism by which to plan and execute how we operate.
And that's the key, right? We have no process in place to do this.
Yeah. And a lot of times if you do, I'm old school, right? But when I used to do account plans, it would be the 3-ring binder that someone, or you go to take it over to Kinko's, right? They'd make a nice presentation and you show it to your boss and then you'd show it to everybody and then it would end up in a drawer somewhere and nobody would look at it. It has to be executable and at the highest levels.
And the electronic equivalent to that is I do it in my OneNote, my Microsoft OneNote or my whatever the equivalent is, right? It's still just
do it in my email. Yeah.
Right. So having a tool and this is one of the things I love about Membrane. It is one of the things that got me so excited about Membrane is that account plan is beautiful because it gives us a mechanism for executing on the plan we make. And maybe for a company who's never done it before, it gives them some ability to think about what might those pieces be because they're just built in. Here's the questions you have to answer. So that is, it doesn't. Your key account partners, your strategic accounts don't just grow. They might keep buying a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more because they're growing, but that's not real growth. That's just they're growing. So they're continuing to do the same thing with you. That's not selling more or to different divisions or.
Yeah. And it just hit me that could be one of the reasons why the founder-led teams, it has to be one of the reasons for some companies, the founder-led teams don't try to scalability because sometimes the founder has created something so innovative that it does just grow for a while, right? It just grows. It's like people are just buying because this is the cool thing. And then it's not. Then they never structure. Then it's not. Yeah. Yeah.
So
sorry, go ahead.
No, so this is a really important point, is our buyers are changing. They're changing fast. The world around them is changing. They're using AI in ways we never dreamed of a year ago or 2 years ago, right? They are changing the way they buy. And we need to change the way we sell. So when we start thinking about our sales process is irrelevant if it does not match the buyer journey. So every time the buyer journey is adjusting, we need to be adjusting our sales process because it must align with how my buyer wants to buy. And if I have a crusty old sales process, or this is the way we've always done it, even if it's not written down, and the buyer's like, but I don't want a demo now. I want this. I want a preliminary budget before I want a demo, or I want whatever. You can't not do it because it doesn't match your sales process. So this thinking and revising and changing our sales process to match the environment in which we're currently selling, to support our channel partners, to all of these things have to be happening because our channel partners, they're all changing.
I heard a horror story the other day, and it's not in manufacturing, but it's in distribution, where they had a bunch of reps out there, and how they sold for years and years and years was they just go visit. They would just go in and visit and take orders, and that's what they did, and that was wonderful. And then their business went to about a quarter of what it was simply because people started retiring, and the new people they were hiring hated the visit. They didn't want to order that way. They wanted it right now. I mean, but you think about it, we do that all the time because we're in manufacturing sales is stuff of that, because we are not diving in and understanding all the players in the accounts, how they want to buy, how they all those things. It's I went off on a bit of a tangent. You wanted to talk about QC, quality control, because we got to dive into that.
So here's the thing. It's my favorite saying, in case you didn't notice. Here's the thing. In a manufacturing company, you have quality control. And quality control looks at the process over and over again, and it checks it all the time. Where is your quality control in sales, and who's responsible for it? I assure you the quality assurance guy is not doing that in the sales process. Right? And maybe they shouldn't be, but someone needs to be. And this is where we need to start thinking about accountability. So if you can develop that sales process that aligns with the buying process, or the selling journey and the buying journey, if you want to think about it that way, and you can start figuring out what the critical steps are, what are the critical things that can't be missed. If you miss them, it could mess up the sale or cost you months on the other end, whatever those things are that we have to do. That involve building trust and overcoming objections and getting information and all that stuff. So if I get that all mapped beautifully, and I set up this beautiful CRM, which I have done around the sales process instead of the reverse. I didn't just sales process the CRM gave me. So if I do all this work, then what? And Paul, you could probably tell me 100 examples of no one used it.
Yep.
No one used it because getting everything in there in the beginning is hard. Keeping it updated is hard. It's a lot of work. And if the sales funnel is not where I spend my day, the CRM is always going to be out of date, and the information is going to be wrong, and it's going to be sloppy. So all of the analysis, all the data analysis that you do is going to be not really valuable, because what is actually in the CRM isn't useful. And what happens is people start using it to store information. Here's when I met, here's what I did, here's what they said, and I do it at some level of proficiency or accuracy, depending upon who I am and what I feel like doing and how busy I am, right?
Yep.
So how do you solve for that? And this is where management is important. I can't just implement a CRM or a process or a system or a checklist and not hold my team accountable. And if I'm holding my team accountable, I need to be accountable. So we forget that part. As a sales leader, I am accountable to my team. If they are going to do the work and they are going to live in the CRM, by golly, that CRM better be easy to use. Right?
Yep.
And if it's easy to use, then they don't have any excuse for not using it. If they can do their email from it and see all of their email, and if they can place their orders and do their whatever they need to do, if they can do it all in there, they will live in the CRM, and the CRM will be up to date. But if I do not hold them accountable and verify and run funnel reviews with them one-on-one, by the way, we do not run group funnel reviews. I have to sit down with them and hold them accountable to the language, hold them accountable to putting the right things in the right place, hold them accountable to putting the right numbers in at different places, depending upon the accuracy of our guess, until we have a proposal that we've agreed upon. Holding them accountable for putting in their next actions. Next actions. I can't say it enough. Every single opportunity or deal in the CRM must have a next action. If it does not, your CRM becomes a repository for past information, poorly written. So,
amen. Shouted from the rooftops. I love it because it's the it's the core problem, the membrane flaw, but it not because of that. I have been such a proponent of two things that you just mentioned there. Number one, the tool should empower the rep, right? It's got to actually empower the rep to run a good sales cycle. And if it doesn't do that, every spot in my career, if it doesn't build the rep an argument for what is going to happen next, you're missing out, right? So And two, if it does do that, and that's fine, but if you don't hold people accountable to actually using and following the process, and you can do it, it's not a hard thing. You do it in a coaching manner. It's wonderful in the one-on-ones in coaching. Like, it's wonderful. I can't even imagine coaching without a CRM. I would hate it.
No, and it should be, that discussion should not be about what the sales rep hasn't done.
Yeah.
So if the CRM is not up to date, tell the sales rep that during our meeting time, they need to update the CRM and we'll meet on Thursday. Right now, I can have a real conversation. Well, what are you going to do when you talk to them? Well, why do you suppose that last conversation didn't go well? Is there anything that we can do? How can I help you? Do you need anything from anybody else on the team? Is there something marketing could do at this point to help us re-engage this customer? That is what a good funnel review sounds like. But what they end up sounding like is what's closing this week, this month, this quarter, this month, this quarter. And
can you change your dates? What's your amount? Why is the probability at 25? It should be at 70.
Right? So we have to use the CRM as a tool to improve our conversations. And we only do that by agreeing on the language and following the rules and holding each other accountable. That means everyone in the company uses the same language that the sales team has agreed upon. And the CEO doesn't ask about deals if we talk about opportunities.
I love it. Well, hey, how do people find you, Liz, if they want to talk some more about this? Because we're going to do some additional events and have some more fun, but how do they find you online?
So two ways. One is you can go to my website, which is regarding-sales.com. You can schedule a meeting if you'd like. I'm happy to spend some time with you talking about your sales process. And the other is you can always find me on LinkedIn. It's Liz Heiman, Heiman, and I'm the only one. So you should be able to find me there, and just let me know where you heard about me, and I will accept your contact and have a conversation with you and set up a call if you'd like, or you can just follow the content.
All right. And we're proud of Membrane to have you as a partner here and love your work. If you are in manufacturing, you're having any issues with your sales, make sure you're getting on LinkedIn, you're pinging Liz, heading to the website, finding out more. She's got a ton of insight on this, and we are going to do some more fun events about this, because I really want to continue to dive on these ideas, quality control, and that 25% to the 1% failure rate to 25% what we accept in forecasting, and then just growing accounts. So there's so much cool stuff that we have a chance to talk about. So any final thoughts to end the interview?
No, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Keep shining bright. Make sure you're doing all the clicking, the subscribing, the sharing, and all of those, and commenting, all of those good things. Get this content out there, and keep shining bright. Have an absolutely